Hey guys, it's Nephrym. How's it going? Hope you all are having a wonderful holiday season. Today I'm bringing you a watercolor piece that I'm doing in Paint Tool Sai. I've messed around with the watercolor brush until I got this really neat look that I thought actually looked like watercolor. I've got my texture on my layer set to watercolor A with a scale of just 100%, and the effect is fringe with varying widths of 1, 2, or 3, kind of depending on the layer. As you can see here, I'm adding some detail to the front birch trees, and I decided to work in these kind of cool purpley tones. I wanted it to have a really crisp feeling, and blues weren't quite doing it for me. So I'm also working lightest to darkest, which would again be reminiscent of working with an actual traditional watercolor piece. And I'm using not only that watercolor brush that I customized, but also the regular brush tool to soften some of the edges, and also the eraser tool for some of the smaller details. Having the fringe effect on the layer is really helpful. It gives that hard edge without having to hand draw it. This is something I really love about Paint Tool Sai that Photoshop just doesn't really have. So now you can see I've flipped the whole picture right side up, and I immediately realized I hated the white at the top of the picture. It just didn't look how I wanted at all. So I painted out just a little bit here, and I also soften up the bottom edge just a bit. I also, you'll see in a second here, painted in some like hand-dropped water or paint. I really love that look in traditional media, so I thought I would try it out on digital media as well. Of course, you could leave that out if you don't like this texture. In just a moment here, I will move over into Photoshop, and I add a gradient around the edge and set it to color burn, and that gives a really neat contrast to the whole piece. And I'll explain what I'm doing here in a moment, but I'm basically just adding some snow to the piece. How pretty. And then I custom made a calligraphy brush off screen because I didn't have one that would quite work for the Merry Christmas. And I really wanted this piece to say Merry Christmas, but even now looking back at it, I feel like it was so forced into the piece. It doesn't quite fit. The background contrast is so high that it makes the lettering a little bit hard to read. And the composition was just kind of a nightmare to work with. I just couldn't get it right. You'll see me move it around here in a minute and change the colors some more to try and get it to work, and it just it still is not, I don't feel like it works. But with the animation, I think it works because I have it fade in. Hey guys, we are real time now, and I thought it would be super fun to show you how to do falling snow in Photoshop. So I'm going to move kind of quickly here, try and follow along. First thing we're going to do is make a new layer and fill it full of black. Super simple. Next we're going to go to Filter. Maybe? Noise, add noise. And I've already got it set here to about 200%, just somewhere in there is fine. Gaussian and monochromatic is perfect. And then we're going to say OK. Next up, Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. And I've already got it set to 2 pixels. OK. Image, Adjustments, and Levels. And you'll see on a bunch of other YouTube videos that people have specific numbers that they drag these to. I just kind of drag it around until I like what I see. And I kind of like to leave some of these like little flecks in the background. I think it gives a lot more depth to the piece. But here again, adjust it however you like. And then OK. So now we've got some snow. Looks great. But it's just a single layer at this point, and I want it to be a pattern that will move infinitely in any direction. So the first thing we kind of have to do is fix the edges. We don't want to define our pattern if we've got messy edges. So I'm going to go to Filter and Other and then Offset. And what this is going to do is bring the edges to the middle, and you can see here there's this kind of line. It's not super visible, but it will be noticeable if we're shifting our pattern around. So I'm just going to kind of leave it however this is set, say OK, and then I'm going to hand paint this out real quick. Alright, double checked the offset, and I think this looks good. I don't see any lines anymore. I think we're ready to move on. So it should be as simple as just defining the pattern by going under Edit and then Define Pattern and save it as whatever you want. But this layer now is still just a single layer. It's not the actual pattern yet. It's not a pattern layer. So we're going to go ahead and drag that down to delete and create a new layer using the little half and half symbol here and do solid color. I'm going to go ahead and just make it black. And then over here we've got the little fill tab, and we're going to bring that down to 0. And then for our effects, we're going to do pattern overlay. And we want this last one, which is the newest pattern we just made. And we say OK. Now we have our pattern, and it is infinite in any direction. This is fabulous. I'm sure you could use this same technique for rain or whatever you want. You can just click and drag it infinitely in any direction. It's really cool. But we can't see our image behind this at the moment because the layer isn't set correctly. So double click Pattern Overlay and then click Blend Mode down to Screen. Hooray! We have snow, and it looks pretty nice. That's pretty exciting. Alright, but I definitely think snow looks flat if it's only one layer, so I'm going to click and drag this down to New Layer, so we duplicate it. But I don't want my snow to be the same size on both layers. I want a little bit of variation. So double click the Pattern Overlay again, and I'm going to bring the scale up to 221. I've messed around with this before. I really like that scale for this size image. You can do it however you see fit. But now you can see we have a front layer and a back layer that I can move individually. And they are both patterns, and they both repeat infinitely in every direction, which is fabulous. So let's get to animating. I have my first frame here, and I've got it set to 0.04 seconds. This means that there are exactly 24 frames per second, which I believe is used in most cartoons. Anyway, so I make a new layer, and I'm going to be moving these snow layers by clicking and dragging them. So we're adjusting where they're set to, and we'll use the tween frame to go ahead and do all of our in-betweens, which is really neat. That might be a bit too much. Let's bring it back a bit, right about here. And now let's move our second layer. And this one I want to have falling a little bit faster and more directly down. It's a little bit closer to the viewer. So there to this bottom edge looks good to me. And now we're going to shift click so we have both our frames highlighted, and click tween. And let's try 120, I think should be good. We'll click OK, and it's going to take barely a second here. Got a fast computer, and this first time running through it might be a little bit jerky just because it's loading, but that looks pretty good to me. So here is the finished animation, guys. I did a little bit of stuff off camera just because I had to mess around with it a lot, and I don't want to make a 20-minute video for you guys. But anyway, thanks so much for joining me today. Have a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you. Enjoy.